What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with our macOS development with AppKit tutorial series. And in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at how we can add an NSMenu and NSMenuItems to our macOS applications. Now, these are found everywhere. You can find NSMenu and NSMenuItems in context menus. You can find them in the menu bar. So File, Edit, View, Window, all that stuff at the top of your screen in macOS. Those are NSMenus, and then everything inside of those are NSMenuItems, and so on and so on. You can also find them in NS pop-up buttons when it's a pull-down button. All right, so these are very useful, and it's very important that you understand how they work. All right, so we already kind of talked about where NSMenus and NSMenuItems occur, and from that you should be able to discern what they are. But to summarize, an NSMenu is as the name implies, a menu that contains many menu items that act as different commands for things in your application. So saving, exporting something, sharing, all that kind of stuff you would find as menu items in a menu. If you have something in the toolbar and you want to summon a menu of options, like adding a new project or task in a project management app or something like that, you would use those as well. Now, in the print panel on macOS, you find an NS pull down button for the kind of for selecting the kind of format you want to print, like a PDF or something. All right. So with that, let's kind of get into the code here so we can create an NSMenu and give it some menu items that we can work with. But one thing I do want to mention too before I forget is that menu items also have optionally can have keyboard commands associated with them. So, for example, Command S, Command Shift S, Command R, Command B, all that kind of stuff you can associate with menu items in your app. Now, that's not the focus of this video. That kind of goes out of the scope of this video. We'll cover keyboard shortcuts in a later video, but for now, it's important to just understand the fundamental concepts of NSMenu and NSMenuItem and how we can introduce them into our applications on a practical level. All right, so let's go into Xcode and we'll take a look at the application we have starting out with. Now, in Xcode, I have a very simple application that only has one pull-down button in the user interface. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a menu and some menu items that when we click on individual menu items, it'll print a different message to the console. A very simple example, but practical at the same time, because maybe you want to perform a task and print some log messages in the console when you're debugging and all that sort of stuff. So knowing how we can do that is pretty useful. All right, we'll run the code here and we'll take a look at the actual application itself in its current state. So it's got to load and do its thing here. Give it a second. All right. So here is our pull down button. Right now it just announces itself as menu button, because we don't have a label for it yet or anything like that. That will come when we add in our menu items to a menu and add that menu to the pull-down button. But you can see the pull-down button takes up about half the window and is centered in the vertically and horizontally in the window itself. practically speaking, you're not always, if ever, going to want to have things centered directly in your window, unless it's like a table or something. But again, we're focused solely on the pull down button here. All right. So let's go back into Xcode and go into our configure method, where we are going to configure, our menus. So we'll go above here, like above where we're configuring our pull down button, and we'll say let menu equals configure menu. Now, this configure menu method we haven't written yet, but this is going to configure our NSMenu itself and then return that NSMenu and store it in this constant. When we do that, we want to initialize the menu property of our pull down button to that menu. So we'll say print pull down dot menu equals menu. Now we will get an error because menu doesn't exactly have a type at the moment, and configure menu doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and create those methods now, or that method now, right? So above configure, we'll say private func configure menu and have it return an NSMenu. Like that. All right, there we go. Now you could also have another method for configuring a menu item, and we can do that here. So we'll say private func configure menu item. But this method is going to take a couple things. First, it's going to take in a title. So what do we want the title of our item to be? And then it's going to take in a selector. So we'll say action selector. And then we'll have this method return. Well, one thing we should also do before I forget is we should also pass in a tag. Now, this tag will be important later, but in short, this tag will allow us to uniquely identify this menu item for use later on. All right. So we'll have this return an NSMenuItem like that. And let's start out by configuring our menu items, because these are rather simple to create here. So to create a menu item, first we need to initialize, or rather instantiate, a NSMenuItem object. So let item equals NSMenuItem. Next, we're going to set the title for our item. So item.title equals title. Item.tag equals tag. So we're setting now the tag to uniquely identify this item. And then finally, we need an action. So we'll say item, excuse me, item dot action equals action. Like that. All right, so that is our menu item configured. It's literally that simple. Now, there are other things you could do with a menu item, but for this use case, That's all we really need. And then we will return item. Excuse me. So here we go with, let's go back up to our configure menu method here. All right, so to configure a NSMenu, the first thing we need to do is we actually need to instantiate an NSMenu object. So we'll say let menu equals NSMenu. All right. Now, the next thing is we need to actually add these items to our menu. So we'll say menu dot that should be, let's see, we want add item, and this is going to be an NSMenu item. All right. So we'll say configure menu item, and then the title will be print hello world. The tag will be 0. Or rather, this will be 1. And then for the selector, it'll be hashtag selector we'll say print message. All right. Now, we'll also add our first item, which as our pull down button is configured, will be effectively the label of our pull down button. So we'll say menu dot add item configure menu item select a message to print tag will be 0 and then the selector will be nil. Now, we haven't made this optional in configure menu item, so we'll go back down and do that here in a moment. But for now, that should be good. Now, we are going to add 2 more menu items. It will say menu dot add item configure menu item print hello macOS. The tag will be 2. And then the selector will also be print message. All right. And then finally, we'll say menu dot add item configure menu item print hello Swift. It will be 3. And then the selector will also be print message, like that. All right, so now that we have that, we can return menu. All right. And then we'll make this selector optional, like that. All right, so we have some errors here. Let's take a look at what those might be. Okay. The issue is that I can't find print message in scope. That's fine because we haven't created that action method yet. Let's go all the way down to the bottom of our view controller. And we'll say at objc private func print message. Now this will take in a sender of type NSMenuItem. And we'll open that up. Now the fact that this takes in a sender is important. Because remember, in our configure menu method, when we're adding all of our items into the menu and we're calling configure menu item, we're giving each of the items a tag and a selector. The selector is the same for all but one item. So in order to uniquely have, or rather, in order to have each of our items print a different message, we need to determine which sender, which item called the action method. And we can do that using its tag. That's why we needed a tag in the first place. So inside of the body of print message, what we're going to do is we're going to switch sender.tag, and we'll say case 0, or rather case 1. We will print hello world, like that. Case 2, we will print hello macOS. And then case 3, we'll say print hello Swift. And then finally, because this switch needs to be exhaustive, we'll add a default case. So default print let's see, okay. We'll say this is a default message. All right, and there we go. Now that is all of our code written. Let's go ahead and save this and run our application. We get a successful build, and here we are. Excuse me. Now you can see our pull down button has a label, select a message to print. When we click on this button, a menu pops up. And inside of this menu are the 3 items that we wanted to have in the menu. So print hello, all right, print hello world, print hello macOS, and print hello Swift. Let's print hello Swift, hello macOS, and print hello world. when we go back into Xcode, and we go into our console here, we can see all 3 messages printed into the console, exactly how we intended it to. So with that being said, that pretty much does it for how we can have NSMenu and NSMenu items in our macOS applications. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.